In February 2024, a Canadian tribunal ruled on a case most business owners have never heard of, and it quietly rewrote the rules for every company running an AI chatbot today. Here's the chain reaction in one sentence before we get into it. A court ruling made companies fully liable for what their AI says. Insurers responded by refusing to cover that liability, and the underlying technology has a built-in error rate that guarantees it'll happen again. Ruling, then exclusion, then inevitability. We're going to walk through all three. And the person who triggered the first domino wasn't a lawyer or a regulator. He was a grieving man trying to book a flight to his grandmother's funeral. Meet Mark. He runs a small logistics company in Ohio, 40 employees. 8 months ago, he deployed an AI customer service chatbot to cut support costs. 3 weeks ago, it promised a client a refund policy that didn't exist. Mark filed a claim with his business insurer. Here's the tease. His insurer denied it, and the reason they gave is the exact same reason spreading through corporate legal departments right now. We're coming back to Mark twice more in this video, once to show you exactly what his insurer said, and once at the end to show you what he did next. On the day his grandmother died, a man named Jake Moffat asked Air Canada's website chatbot a simple question. Did the airline offer bereavement fares, and could he apply for one after already buying his ticket? The chatbot said yes and told him he had 90 days to submit the request retroactively. He did exactly what it told him. Air Canada denied the claim. Their actual policy required the request before travel, not after. The chatbot had invented a policy that never existed, stated with total confidence. Moffat took it to Canada's Civil Resolution Tribunal. Air Canada's defense, the chatbot was, in their words, a separate legal entity responsible for its own actions. Tribunal member Christopher Rivers rejected that outright, ruling that a chatbot is still just part of a company's website and that it makes no legal difference whether information comes from a static page or an AI system. Air Canada paid roughly $800. Legally, that's nothing. As precedent, it's significant. Though it's worth a quick caveat here. This was a small claims tribunal ruling, not a Supreme Court decision, and it rests on basic agency law, the same principle that makes a company responsible for what an employee tells a customer. It didn't invent new law. It just confirmed that AI doesn't get a special exemption from a rule that already existed. So here's the actual causal chain. Courts confirmed AI output counts as the company's own statement, which meant a risk that used to feel theoretical suddenly had a dollar figure and a legal citation attached to it. That's the link insurers couldn't ignore. Think of the valet analogy carefully, because it's useful, but not the whole picture. Handing a customer-facing chatbot to the public is like handing someone your car keys. If they crash, you don't get to say, technically they were driving. Legally, this comes down to basic agency principles. You're responsible for the actions of something you deployed on your behalf, whether it's a person or software. Product liability adds a second layer on top. If the product causes harm through a design flaw, meaning here an AI that predictably makes things up, the manufacturer or deployer can also be on the hook. And the disclosure numbers show how fast that message landed inside corporate America. In 2020, only 4% of public companies listed AI as a material risk in official SEC filings, meaning a factor formally disclosed to investors as something that could hurt the business. By 2024, that had risen to 43%. Among Fortune 500 companies specifically, over half now formally listed. Among media companies, over 90%. Quick one. Have you personally gotten a confidently wrong answer from a company chatbot? Comment yes if it's happened to you. I have a feeling this comment section is about to get long. And this isn't just happening to small operators like Mark. Multiple large customer service and retail brands have quietly paused or scaled back public-facing generative AI chatbots after high-profile incorrect answer incidents made headlines, replacing them with far more restricted scripted systems instead of open-ended ones. Several major airlines and telecom providers have added human review checkpoints to any AI-generated response that touches a refund, a fee, or a policy exception, specifically citing legal exposure in internal guidance since the Air Canada ruling. The pattern is consistent regardless of company size. Smaller companies like Mark's get caught because they can't afford legal teams to review every chatbot response. Larger companies get caught because their scale guarantees that a small error rate produces real incidents every single week. Insurance companies have one job: price risk accurately or exclude it. Starting in 2026, the industry looked at generative AI and made its decision. New policy exclusions began specifically targeting AI-generated content: text, images, audio, video, code. If you're unfamiliar with the term, a policy exclusion is simply a clause that says this specific type of claim will not be paid, even if the rest of your policy would normally cover it. Multiple major commercial insurers added AI content exclusions across their liability and errors and omissions lines, meaning coverage for professional mistakes. State regulators approved the large majority of these filings. This mirrors what happened with cyber insurance a decade ago: quiet coverage, then claims, then exclusions, then expensive standalone products. AI liability is moving through that same cycle faster. And here's the tempered version of the concerning part. A meaningful share of insurers have publicly stated they lack sufficient historical claims data to price AI risk with confidence yet, which is a standard, rational reason to exclude a risk rather than underprice it. Here's exactly what happened to Mark, as promised. His commercial general liability policy was written in 2024, before most AI exclusions existed. When he filed his claim, his insurer's adjuster cited a newly added endorsement excluding claims arising from content generated by artificial intelligence or automated systems, legally responsible for what his chatbot said and with no coverage to pay for it. If you run a business with any AI tool in it, quick gut check. Does your policy even mention AI? Reply check if you're not sure, or clear if you've actually confirmed you're covered. This video is sponsored by Sponsor Name. 20 to 25-second read here. Now, the third link in the chain: why this keeps happening at the technical level, even to companies that know all of this already. Here's the part almost nobody explains clearly. This isn't a bug waiting to be patched. It's built into how these systems work. A language model doesn't look facts up in a database. It predicts the next most statistically likely word based on patterns in its training data. Most of the time, that prediction happens to be true. Sometimes it isn't. There's no internal alarm when that happens. A made-up policy is stated with the same confidence as a real one.
To be fair, companies aren't defenseless here. Techniques like retrieval-augmented generation, where the model pulls from a verified document instead of guessing, or tighter grounding and fine-tuning on approved company policy text, meaningfully reduce this error rate in practice. But none of them eliminate it completely, and none of them come with a legal guarantee. A model can still fail to retrieve the right document or blend a real policy with an invented detail, and every mitigation still requires ongoing human auditing to catch what slips through. Researchers studying this in 2025 concluded these errors are mathematically inevitable given how the underlying prediction mechanism works, not a temporary limitation. Independent benchmarks across dozens of leading models still find meaningful hallucination rates even in top-performing systems, higher still in specialized fields like law and medicine. To be fair to the other side of this, not every AI deployment is reckless, and plenty of companies are doing this responsibly. Financial trading firms running AI systems in tightly controlled, fast feedback environments see very different outcomes because a wrong output there gets corrected by the market within seconds at a measurable cost, forcing constant retraining. Some enterprise deployments now apply a similar principle to customer service: narrow, single-purpose AI tools restricted to a fixed set of approved answers with mandatory human sign-off before anything legally binding goes out. Regulators and insurers view these audited, narrow systems very differently from an open-ended chatbot that can say almost anything. The risk isn't AI itself. It's specifically open-ended, unaudited AI making unbounded promises with no human checkpoint. So, back to the roadmap from the start. An on-air ruling made AI output legally the company's own words. Insurers responded by excluding a risk they couldn't yet price, and the underlying technology has a measurable, currently irreducible error rate that guarantees this happens again somewhere to someone on a regular basis. Mark didn't do anything reckless. He did what thousands of companies his size were told was smart and cost-saving. He was simply one of the ones that timing caught first, before his coverage caught up to the risk. Here's what Mark actually did afterward. He pulled the open-ended chatbot entirely, replaced it with a narrow, pre-approved FAQ-only version, and added a rule that any AI-generated response involving money, a refund, a legal policy, or a binding promise must be reviewed by a named human before it's sent, not just monitored after the fact. Put a name and a backup name on that responsibility, not just a department. If your insurer won't cover what your chatbot says, your cost-cutting measure just became an uninsured liability wearing a customer service badge. If you want the next part of this story, subscribe, because next week, uncovering how the AI infrastructure spending behind all of this is actually being financed, and why the companies pouring the most money into AI are quietly buying back their own stock at the same time. And drop your own "the chatbot told me something that wasn't true" story in the comments below. I'm reading all of them.